I acquired every Tom Ford private blend fragrance, so you don't have to. We previously covered the signature line of Tom Ford through the same sponsor as today's video, where we covered their fragrances using mostly samples to give you guys an overall idea as to which fragrances you would like to check out. I think Tom Ford used to be a much more creative and innovative brand in their earlier days. I don't think they're pioneering as much anymore, unfortunately. In this video, I'm literally going to go through the tomford.co.uk beauty website of their private blend page. I'm literally going to scroll through it. I'm only going to cover the fragrances that are featured there. Any other fragrance you don't see in today's video, I'm going to presume they're discontinued. So no, we're not going to cover Plum Japonais, we're not going to cover Italian Cypress. Sorry guys, no Oud Wood Intense, no Tuscan Leather Intense. Although I'm sure there's going to be comments asking where those fragrances are regardless. We're going to go through each fragrance through their scent profile, their performance, their wearability, which gender I think they're best for, and then my overall final rating out of 10 for each fragrance. Let's begin. Today's video is sponsored by ScentSplit. I always say on this channel that extremely expensive fragrances like the Tom Ford private line are worth sampling first before committing to a full bottle. ScentSplit lets you try out samples delivered to your door worldwide through their very handy service. They do a variety of sample sizes for both designer and niche fragrance brands. They have 1 ml blotter samples, 2 ml sprays, 5 ml sprays, and then finally a 9 ml sample spray as well. Websites like ScentSplit are infinitely useful to fragrance collectors like ourselves. They let you try things before you buy to make sure you are getting the best quality in your collection with each purchase. I'll leave a link in the description down below for ScentSplit's website, and at the end of this video I'm going to go through my favorite Tom Ford private blend fragrances for you to go ahead and sample straight away to get the best of the brand. Let's start the video. So the first fragrance we're covering, provided by ScentSplit, is Soleil De Feu. Now this is a fragrance I've never tried before. It doesn't get a lot of talk in the community. I'm gonna have to reapply some of these fragrances onto ScentSplit, by the way, guys, because there's 28 fragrances we're going through here, and it definitely is tricky to remember all of them by name. It's easier to remember them through scents, but from what I remember, this was not a great fragrance. So this is a very pleasant, smooth, ambery fragrance. I remember this as being quite simple, clean, sexy, probably not worth the price. It reminds me of Initio fragrances, stuff like Blessed Baraka, Side Effect, those simple and clean amber evening scents that are nicely blended, but I feel like Initio might be a little bit better. I think the performance here was a bit average, around 6 hours. Great blend, limited wearability as a cold weather evening scent. I think it's overall a 7 out of 10. It's going to be questionable as to whether or not you want to spend the money on it, bearing in mind there's other competing scents in the market. I wrote here, slightly smoky in the opening, smooth dry down, very Middle Eastern, becomes more musky and a little bit floral and ambery on the dry down as well. Unisex. The next fragrance is Electric Cherry, which I remember being quite a disappointing cherry scent. This is going to be our line of cherry fragrances from Tom Ford now. They're kind of going into this direction of covering this cherry notes with several releases. Now, Electric Cherry has a very interesting opening. It smells like synthetic candied cherry ice cream is how I described it. But then the opening is the best part about it. It kind of becomes very ambery, musky, very generic, and really disappointing dry down later on. About 4 to 6 hours longevity. It's disappointing longevity there as well. Unisex, leaning slightly feminine. I think this is horribly overpriced. I gave this a 5 out of 10. Definitely not the best cherry choice from the brand. 32% of people who watch School of Scent are subscribed to us. If you guys want to see our channel grow, to really help us out, click subscribe. Let's get that number to 40%. Thank you. So next up we have Cherry Smoke, which I remember being a little bit better. I think this might be my favorite cherry fragrance from the brand. So this kind of smells very sexy, sweet, gourmand, a really nice edible cherry. That has some interesting notes and note breakdown. It has stuff like olive and things like that, but which I did not pick up. It's not a cherry smoke fragrance initially. I don't get the smokiness on the opening at all. It smells really sexy, creamy, and gourmand-like in the opening. The smokiness comes a little bit later on in the mid and the dry down. I wrote down that it smells a little bit like a cherry marzipan, slightly medicinal, powdery vanilla, smoky, woody on the mid, on the dry down, and then eventually becoming a powdery lipstick smell, which some of the other cherry fragrances of Tom Ford also share this feature. I said it was an interesting idea, but doesn't smell expensive enough for the price. I don't get this strange notes like olive. Unisex, leaning a bit feminine, 6 to 8 hours medium, and it stays as a skin scent for a long time. Yeah, whether or not this is a worthy of the price tag fragrance for you is a point of contention again. I would say the scent is nice, the performance is decent performing. Wearability is more of a cold weather fragrance. So overall, I give this a 7.5 out of 10. I would say this is the best cherry fragrance in the private blend. And the next one's a classic here. It is Tom Ford's Oud Wood. Oud Wood is probably the best seller in the private blend from what I can gather. It is a beast that is multifaceted. It's a signature fragrance that has a very interesting style. Very innovative when it first came out in 2007, I believe. Green, woody, sharp, masculine, a little bit smoky, a little bit of spice in there, musky. It's got this synthetic oud, which I think is synthetic. I don't think it's real, but it's still very attractive. It's a very attractive signature you wear most of the year round, apart from maybe the summertime. Now, I've got my golden sticker old bottle here, but I do believe it's been reformulated significantly. I've got a sample from the new gray sticker bottles that you currently can get. And what I picked up was that actually the performance is not as bad as I thought it was. I thought this was a much shorter lasting fragrance. I don't think it's longevity that's been reduced. I think it's more the projection. My gold sticker bottle is definitely a stronger projector. It smells more rich as well, whilst the new bottles smell a bit more dry, focusing more on the musks, which can make some people go anosmic and nose blind to it and make them think that the longevity isn't there. But I do think longevity is still there, still over 8 hours from the new sample. I still think it's an incredibly sexy fragrance. The scent blend is fantastic. The ingredients smell great. The performance is there. Wearability is great as well. I still think it's worth the price. There are other competing fragrances like That Means Carved Oud or Aaron Terence Hughes Oud as well. But overall, I still think Oud Wood deserves a 10 out of 10. It is a classic for a reason. Tom Ford's Tobacco Vanille. Tobacco, vanilla, spicy, gourmand cocoa. That's how I would summarize this fragrance. So it's got that gourmand aspect in there. It has that photorealistic spice cabinet aspect as well. This smells niche. It smells like a very high-end special occasion evening fragrance for the cold weather for both genders. It's a cool idea. Again, this really represents what the Tom Ford Private Blend used to be all about. Really creative, very bold and interesting ideas thrown into perfumery. Again, there are now competing fragrances. So maybe this isn't as edgy or as pioneer as it once was. There are really great clones like Al Haramain's Amber Oud Tobacco Edition. I guess it's super accurate. And then there's also fragrances like Aaron Terence Hughes Tobacco, which is definitely directly comparable to this. Not a clone at all, but you know, a similar kind of scent profile. So Tobacco Vanilla is still a classic though. It's not the most versatile fragrance, but it's a really interesting, distinct, unique, and pioneering special occasion evening scent. Perfect for the black tie event. I still give this a 9 out of 10. I get 10 hours longevity with a soft to medium projection, by the way. Lost Cherry by Tom Ford. Now, this might be the worst of the cherries out of the three. I think it came out first, and when I first smelled it, I feel like the opening is kind of like they're trying to revive Plum Japonais. It smells like a candied marzipan cherry opening. Probably the opening is the best part about this fragrance, and then it becomes very lackluster on the dry down. It's bright, really an interesting opening, quite sexy, definitely a feminine fragrance overall. Then dries down here, what I've written is, it dries down to a disappointing, simple, powdery blend. Smells like a makeup boutique, sort of like that lipstick thing I was talking about earlier. It's around 6 hours longevity with medium projection, which is a little bit disappointing for how heavy this fragrance kind of smells. It kind of makes you feel like it's going to be a long-lasting winter fragrance. I think it is a cold weather scent, so it's limited in its wearability as well. Average performing. I don't think this is worth this price tag, and I would personally give this a 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Rose Prick, which actually ended up really surprising me. So of course, I expected this to be a rose fragrance, and I expected it to be feminine. And I think both those things hold true. It's primarily the rose character. That is what it's focusing on mainly. It's kind of like the ombre leather of Rose in Tom Ford. Rose character with a bunch of other supporting characters that aren't really major at all. But the rose that you've used here is very creamy, almost like one of those strawberry hard candy, creamy candies, if you guys know what I mean. In the UK we had them, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like strawberries and cream. It's like a strawberry creamy note that reminds me of Maison Francis Kurkdjian's Oud Satin Mousse, sort of like they have this Turkish delight, really delectable, almost edible rose in here. It's really sexy, it's really smooth and really nicely blended. This is a really surprising fragrance. It really pleasantly surprised me. It's got a great blend, great wearability, decent performance. I think it's an average performance, 6 to 8 hours maybe. Medium projection, definitely feminine. I think this is a really sexy fragrance for a girl to wear. A really elegant, well put together, chic, maybe a little bit rich girl. I think we could rock this really nicely. It's really sexy. I give this a 9 out of 10, a really, really good release. White Suede. Now this name was a bit confusing to me because I remember this not really smelling very suede-like. This kind of just smells really nicely blended white florals and musk, kind of like that laundry detergent style of combining white florals and musks together. but it's more on a heavier, muskier side. So this is not like an easy summer, like a generic summery kind of fragrance like that. I think it can be worn in the warm weather, but it has more robustness, a bit more strength to it. So I think I got quite good performance with this, about 6 to 8 hours. So this is like definitely a feminine fragrance, or at least unisex leaning feminine. Spring, summer, maybe the early days of autumn. So it's not the worst in its wearability. It smells like it has a nice blend, but I don't know if the ingredients themselves smell like they justify the private blend price tag. Overall though, I think this is a decent fragrance that I don't get much suede in. Maybe the suede is there as a sort of a nicely blended kind of camouflage note in there to give it that longevity it needs. It's got a sexy muskiness to it. I think I prefer it on paper strip than I did on my own skin, actually, funnily enough, but it does have that classical style of white florals and musks I was talking about. So overall, I give this a 7 out of 10. It's worth checking out if you like this kind of style. So next up, we have Bitter Peach, and I remember being bitterly disappointed by this fragrance. It kind of sounds like it'd be quite a fun, exciting scent DNA. I think I looked at the note breakdown and I was kind of a little bit disappointed. I don't think, from what I've written down, apparently a lot of the notes just weren't there for me. I'm just getting a very simplistic, candied peach fragrance. It smells feminine, overly synthetic, especially for the price tag. I think this is quite a very expensive fragrance that dries down later on to really intensely to just a sudden jump to vanillic notes. So it goes super synthetic vanilla later on. This kind of smells really cheap. It smells like a fragrance you'd buy for £20, not for £200. And I remember just being really disappointed by this. Good performer, I guess, 6 to 8 hours with a soft to medium projection. I can imagine you wear this in the colder weather only, autumn and winter time. I was really disappointed by this. I personally do not think this is one of Tom Ford's best at all. I give this a 5 out of 10 personally. The next fragrance is Neroli Portofino by Tom Ford. So I think, again, this used to have Forte or Neroli Portofino Aqua. I don't think these fragrances exist anymore. I think it's just the original. This is meant to be seen as a classic by Tom Ford. And again, I think maybe when it first came out, this might have been a little bit more interesting, but nowadays there's a lot of scent DNAs that are like this. So it's very clean, high quality Neroli they've used here. I give it to them props. Like Neroli itself can be very expensive, even if it doesn't last that long in the fragrance. It's more of a top note, like 10 minutes it can last for, but you can still spend thousands of pounds per kilo just getting the good quality Neroli. It's a difficult to harvest flower from what I've learned, my limited reading on the subject. So I think they've used high quality ingredients. The blend is nice, but I think the price tag is just not worth what you're getting here. And the performance isn't that great either. It's about 46 hours, this medium projection, unisex, definitely a perfectly unisex fragrance for the spring and the summertime. The issue is it competes against other similarly nice smelling Neroli, musky, white floral, clean citrusy fragrances like Allure Homme Sports Cologne or Mugler's Cologne Come Together. Those kind of fresh, lively summertime fragrances that focus around Neroli. So it's soapy, clean, nicely blended, but overpriced in my opinion. My final score for this is a 6 out of 10. The next fragrance is Soleil Neige, and I had a quick look at my notes on it, and I don't remember liking this. I think this is quite a jasmine focused fragrance, which had, so it's like a dark animalic jasmine, had good longevity, good wearability, but the blend and the experience overall was quite unpleasant. I think it smelled too indolic, and indolic is just another fancy word for a little bit poopy, if you know what I mean, in fragrances. And jasmine itself, some variants of jasmine can be high in indole, which is a constituent of other fecal molecules in scent profiles. So this for me just smelled a little bit too intense, a little bit sickly, a little bit, I don't know, just a little bit fecal from that indole. It feels like they have an interesting idea. Like I like the boldness, the risks they took with it, but I'm not a huge fan of the blend. I think the last dry down was a little bit better, a little bit ambery, smoothed out, less pooey. But I just did not enjoy this fragrance overall. So I think I got like 6 to 8 hours longevity, works in 3 seasons excluding the summertime. I think it's unisex, leaning a little bit feminine, but I just don't think most people like this. It's just not very palatable. It's not a great experience. It has some things going for it, but overall I still give this a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, next up is Myrrhe Mystere. This fragrance I'm not gonna have to reapply again because I actually applied this recently. It's one of the last ones I tested. And this is basically one of their Middle Eastern woody scents that kind of fits into the same sort of family as Bois Marocain, Ebene Fume, as well as Tobacco Oud. Woody, Middle Eastern fragrances, and it's focusing obviously on the note of myrrhe as its main profile. And myrrhe itself is a very expensive resin from trees in Africa, I believe. Again, limited reading on the topic, but I believe it's a very expensive ingredient. And the name and the marketing maybe kind of makes it seem like it's going to be really cool. It has a very high price tag, like £300. I don't think this fragrance is even worth the regular private blend price, honestly. It's a very simplistic fragrance. It kind of has that nice myrrh, but it has nothing else going for it. It's a very simple, a little bit dry, Middle Eastern, ambery fragrance. Myrrh, sandalwood, and some dryness. I think that even the note breakdown kind of accurately represents how simplistic this fragrance smells. It doesn't smell particularly expensive or creative, and I think that the longevity was okay. I think it's just about 8 hours, which is all right for a cold weather scent. Unisex leaning a little bit more masculine, but this is a very lackluster release. I don't think the ingredients are particularly special. I feel like they haven't packed enough nice ingredients to make it special. Maybe the myrrh is a little bit nice here, but that's about it. The price is way too high. The blend is so uninspiring. Longevity is okay. And it's limited in its wearability. I would personally give this a 5 out of 10 at most, and I think that's being a little bit generous. I think it's horribly overpriced for what it is, when you consider the fact that you can get fragrances like Amouage's Interlude Man Black Iris for around £200 for 100 ml, and that's a myrrh fragrance as well, but it's got a lot more going on. It's much better price, it's a lot more worth your money. This is not a great release in my opinion. Tom Ford's Friggin' Fabulous. Now this is a fragrance of being another case of being really overpriced. However, I actually do quite like this fragrance. I feel like this is kind of a Marmite fragrance. Some people really vouch by it, and other people absolutely are appalled by the price tag once again. Now, I would say that yes, the price tag is too high still, but at the same time, I still think it's a fragrance that people should check out because it's quite a cool idea. It's a spicy, medicinal, creamy leather scent that smells really nice, smooth, and chic. Elegant chic is how I would describe it in the air. I can imagine people of both genders who are in the audience of, let's say, a fashion runway show in, like, let's say, Paris Fashion Week or London Fashion Week, New York, will be watching an audience. They'd be very elegant and chic with their clothing, and they would wear something like this. I feel like this is a really wealthy, elite person's partying scent, but at the same time it doesn't smell like it's incredibly expensive. I feel like the blend is more of what I'm talking about, not necessarily the ingredients themselves. I know they have some nice ingredients in there, like I think they have heliotrope and something like that, which can kind of give this slight marzipan-y, bitter almond effect to a fragrance. And also they have orris noted in the note breakdown, but it's not really prominent at all. I don't think it smells expensive, so expensive to match that price tag, but it's a cool idea. It's a unique fragrance I haven't really smelled anywhere else. I know there's clones of it, but I still respect the idea of this. If this was priced at the standard private blend price range, I would say this is worth it. It's got good wearability, 3 out of 4 seasons, excluding the summertime in my opinion. 6 to 8 hours longevity with a medium projection. This is a really cool, clubbing, wealthy, chic, elegant chic scent that has a really cool idea behind it. I still give this an 8 out of 10. Whether or not it's worth this price tag, you definitely need to sample this first. Now I'm respraying one of the classics, that is Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather. Again, one of their legacy fragrances, let's say. Strong, smoky, unapologetic leather. And the nice thing about having a sample and giving more time to it, having more time to experience it, is that I also now appreciate it has another aspect to it. First of all, it's a little bit spicy. I think it's a little bit peppery in my opinion. It's giving you that kind of fuzziness in here. It's like a fuzzy, smoky, intense beast of a leather scent, but it also has an intense dryness to it as well. I definitely think there must be Virginian cedarwood in here. Virginian cedarwood can give off this dry pencil shavings effect to a fragrance. I think it definitely has a dry woodiness in this fragrance. But at the same time, it smells like a really elegant, but also animalic leather scent. I feel like ombre leather is the more safe, beginner-friendly leather fragrance in Tom Ford. It kind of just has that elegance, whilst this has a bit of that roughness, that ruggedness, a little bit of animalic nature in here. Unfortunately, though, a lot of other fragrances can compete with this. So I feel like, again, this is one of the better fragrances back in the day when it was more pioneering. But now there are fragrances like Acqua di Parma's Leather or Rasasi La Yuko One, which clones this really nicely. So whether or not it's worth the price tag, I don't know. It's a point of contention. It's a classic. I think it's worth checking out. Fantastic longevity, around 10 hours with at least medium projection. Probably unisex, leaning masculine overall. I give Tuscan Leather an 8 out of 10. Mandarino Di Amalfi. Again, it's one of those summer classics from the brand that's always put next to Neroli Portofino. And again, probably a little bit overpriced too also. But again, maybe back in the day, it would have been more justifiable, the price tag, but nowadays with so many competing scents, I feel like the private blend just hasn't kept up with the market and what great stuff is out there now. Mandarino Di Amalfi, okay, it's gonna smell Italian, citrusy, fresh, summery, based on that name. I thought it would have mandarin as a note in its breakdown, but actually, I think I remember it didn't. It had all these other citruses in there. But I still feel like it smelled mandarin-like. I felt like it smelled mandarin with some mint notes in there, some white florals in there. I think it smelled a bit like neroli. I don't think neroli is in there. I think it was like orange blossom, which is a related fragrance to neroli. Those notes share similarities in their background. They come from the same kind of tree, but from different parts of the tree and different species. Again, do some reading into it if you want to, but it kind of does smell like a minty, mandarin, clean neroli fragrance. I wrote down it smells summery, slightly aquatic, perfectly unisex, great blend and great ingredients. A beautiful use of linen-like raw materials. I think this is what they refer to as the lily of the valley raw materials. So it smells like very linen-like, bright, airy, summery, very nice. A little bit woody, a little bit detergenty with its musks, if you know what I mean. That slight laundry detergent effect, but it didn't go overboard, so it's still quite nice and natural and balanced. I'm not sure if it's worth its price tag. The performance isn't fantastic, which it kind of is the performance that you'd expect from this fragrance, about 4 to 6 hours with a medium projection. Overall, I'll give this a 7.5 out of 10. It's a great summertime scent if you don't mind just reapplying, if you don't mind spending that kind of money. So it might be worth checking out for you. Now I'm reapplying Noir De Noir to the paper strip here. I remember always thinking to myself, this smells like the superior version of Black Orchid. I've tried this fragrance before in the displays in stores for Tom Ford, and it kind of fits that family of Black Orchid, but it's not as annoying as Black Orchid. So basically it's like a nicer, more chilled out, better blended version of that dark patchouli, floral, vanillic DNA of Black Orchid. It's dark, sexy, sweet, sensual, definitely a cold weather evening scent. That definitely is unisex, leaning more feminine, but still very sexy, I think, overall. I kind of feel like someone like, I don't know, Catwoman would wear something like this. So this is just a really naughty, beautiful, sexy, playful evening scent. It smells a little bit gourmand, but how nice and delectable, how tasty the ingredients kind of smell. It's like a really nice vanilla behind this. Oh yeah, I noted that there's apparently oud in the note breakdown. There's a bit of woodiness, but I don't think there's any real oud in here. This is a thing that Tom Ford Private Blend usually does. They say there's oud in their fragrances, but I think there isn't, basically. But this is a really sexy fragrance. Nice, smooth, and creamy. Almost gourmand-like, yet agreed. Sexy. I think this is a 9 out of 10 fragrance, primarily for a woman. Azure Lime, and this is another fragrance they don't really hear about in the brand, and I can see why. It's quite lackluster. It was a nice lime note in here, photorealistic, mixed with this robust, strong sandalwood, so a nice woodiness in there, but it felt very simplistic, not really any character or personality to this fragrance, which is kind of strange for a Tom Ford Private Blend scent. And the performance was quite lackluster as well, maybe 4 hours, really lackluster media projection, and it felt quite heavy while still not being that long lasting. So I really think this is a very limited fragrance in all respects, really. I give this a 5.5 out of 10. I think it's perfectly unisex, but I think it's not worth the price tag personally. Soleil Blanc, this is a classic from the brand as well. This is creamy, coconut, white floral, sunscreen-like, and very tonka heavy. Again, that creaminess comes from this fragrance. This is like a ray of sunshine, but in a creamy and smooth way applied on your skin. Definitely a bit more feminine, but not a bad long-lasting fragrance actually for the scent profile. It's tropical, definitely spring and summer, 6 to 8 hours longevity. Nice blend. The ingredients don't smell particularly expensive. I'm not sure if it's worth the price again. And also it has other fragrances like Maison Margiela's Beach Walk or Dolce & Gabbana's Sun Pour Homme, or for women as well, that kind of compete with it. They probably use a similar molecule they have here called benzyl salicylate, which kind of gives off that sunscreen effect to a fragrance. So I think Soleil Blanc is a sexy fragrance for a woman to wear in the summertime primarily. But again, whether or not it's worth its price tag is going to be a point of contention. Overall, I give this a 7 out of 10. It's a sexy, creamy summertime fragrance that really will appeal to some people more than others. I can't wait to talk about this, Fougere D'Argent. This fragrance is one of my for life fragrances, or it used to be. Fougere D'Argent in the old formulation had a beautiful sort of camphorous, so kind of like a very piercing, outdoorsy, organic smelling freshness to it. Really invigorating, but also creamy and elegant with the tonka bean, the lavender, a very traditional Fougere fragrance that had like soft to medium projection, lasted 10 hours. This is honestly the perfect signature. It just works all year round. It is the traditional Fougere brought into modern times. Of course, Tom Ford has Beau de Jour as well, which they put into their signature line. I think this is superior. That's the reason why I gave away my Beau de Jour, because I have this old bottle of Fougere D'Argent. I initially acquired a new bottle, which is unfortunately reformulated. Its performance is not as good, and it's nowhere near as rich, nowhere near as creamy, nowhere near as robust. A very lackluster new formulation. It's kind of lost that sparkle of the fragrance. So this is definitely a more masculine fragrance. You can wear all year round as your signature. And I think the old formulation is an easy 10 out of 10. The new formulation is going to come down to a 7 out of 10. So I think the fragrance is still worth trying, but I do definitely think it's been heavily reformulated. That's why I had to get 2 bottles. I had to go acquire an old bottle somehow from online. I had to get the old stuff. It's much better in my opinion. I can tell the difference straight away. So yeah, it's a sad story about this fragrance, reformulated in a bad way. Check it out regardless, especially if you love Fugeres. Tom Ford's Tobacco Oud. Now this is a fragrance, again, talked a lot about in the community, primarily probably because of Jeremy. I remember he did that one video where he actually said to Tom Ford's face,
I'm currently the leading fragrance influencer, and I spoke obviously very highly of your fragrances. I love Tobacco Oud. It's currently my most complimented and most disliked fragrance.
It's one of my most hated fragrances, but in a good way. And I don't think Tom Ford took that well, understandably. So Tobacco Oud is the name, tobacco and oud, but not real oud again, in my opinion. I don't think so. I think it's more of a sandalwood molecule, and it has some ambers in here that kind of give off an animalic effect. It's kind of like they're trying to be cheeky. In the opening, it smells a little bit animalic, barnyard-like, kind of trying to recreate real oud, but it's not. It's more from probably, maybe they use a tiny bit of civet to give that tiny bit of animalic amber note in there. Maybe the benzoin listed in the note breakdown can give that a tiny animalic effect as well, but I don't think it's real oud. And it's more, so it's more of a sandalwood, Middle Eastern, spicy, ashy tobacco fragrance. The tobacco kind of dries down after a few hours later on and kind of stays more of it as a sandalwood ambery fragrance in the dry down. It's an interesting idea. I think it's really cool. I think it would have been a much more interesting idea back in the early days. I think it was a lot more polarizing and weird back then, but nowadays it kind of, again, is not keeping up with the competition nowadays, in my opinion. Again, I will say Aaron Terence Hughes' Tobacco could compete with this, because Tobacco itself is that tobacco vanille. Tobacco and vanilla is in there, but also oud, so it becomes tobacco and oud. It's sort of like tobacco vanille and tobacco oud combined together make Aaron Terence Hughes Tobacco. So that kind of fragrance competes with this nowadays. I don't think this is as bold or as crazy nowadays as it used to be, but it's still a cool scent. I still think it's worth checking out. It has good performance, at least 10 hours and medium projection. Definitely a cold weather fragrance that's definitely more masculine. I give us an 8 out of 10 still. Now we are reapplying Jasmin Rouge, and I remember this being quite an interesting fragrance because it had an interesting name, Jasmin Rouge, so red jasmine. I expected there to be some rose with jasmine in here. The jasmine is definitely detectable, and I think it's ylang ylang is the other floral in here. So it's definitely a heavy on the floral fragrances in this blend. Very natural, very artisanal, very elegant, but at the same time, very much a little bit artisanal. Something like Le Labo would create something like this, I think. I feel like Le Labo would create, I don't know, they created Rose 31. I feel like you could compare that fragrance to this, for example. Very high in naturals, very feminine, very chic. I feel like a mature, elegant, chic woman would rock this really nicely. So I said yes, okay, it's a clean, high quality jasmine. They use good ingredients, not animalic jasmine, so this is the not the indolic stuff I was mentioning earlier, with some ylang ylang and a touch of rose. I think there might be a touch of rose because it does give off that red effect. It does feel like a red fragrance from that. Maybe the name is the thing that's biasing me. It's not complex. I think the note breakdown kind of makes it seem like it's complex, but it smells high quality, natural, artisanal. I said this is linear, quite simple, and unfortunately only performs around 4 to 6 hours. I feel like this could be like a spring, summer, and autumn fragrance. Overall, I said this is a 7 out of 10 due to the limited performance, but it's not a bad option to go for. It might be worth the price to you if you don't mind reapplying. Now, we're applying now a very interesting fragrance, Tubereuse Nue. Are you somebody who's heard of this fragrance discussed ever in the community? Tom Ford's Tubereuse Nue. I wasn't expecting to see, great things about this fragrance. I was expecting a very feminine tuberose-based scent, because tuberose is quite what people say, an older woman smelling notes, but I was actually super pleasantly surprised by this fragrance. I feel like actually it's unisex. It's definitely tuberose-based, but it's so nicely blended. It's surprisingly dark. It's a dark tuberose, woody amber fragrance. How unique is that? I was just shocked by how balanced this is, how unisex this is, and how interesting, new, and unique this is. This is a very unique idea. I really like this. I thought this is a little bit dark, a little bit camphor, so again, a little bit outdoorsy, but it has really nice ingredients and a really nice blend. I really like creative and new ideas. I honestly thought this is a fragrance from back in their glory days, but I actually looked, and I think it's like 2021 this fragrance came out, which is really surprising. This might be one of their better, or one of their best recent private line releases, but maybe not a lot of people will appreciate this, I don't think. It's a shame, because I actually think this is really excellent. It's got a fantastic blend, a really sexy dry down, really nice ingredients, good longevity, 6 to 8 hours, with good balance, so you can wear this 3 out of 4 seasons, excluding the summertime. And I think this is worth its price tag, honestly. I would give this a 9 out of 10. I was really pleasantly surprised. It might be one of my new favorites from the private blend. So check this out if you haven't already. Ebene Fume. How many times have I talked about this fragrance? I've said a lot of negative things about this in the past, and it's going to continue that way. I think this fragrance has a nice opening. It's like a glowy, smoky, ambery, Middle Eastern effect to this fragrance. I think what's the woods I'm talking about? It's like one of the smoky woods. Palo Santo, I think the wood is called. Overall, it gives this woody Middle Eastern effect. Like I said, this is like in that family of fragrances in the private blend. It's okay longevity. It's around 6 to 8 hours, cold weather, masculine, but it's more like a simplistic, inferior version to other fragrances in the market. So you can go for something like Oud Wood, which is like an affordable alternative to this fragrance, or you can go for something like How Fetty, which I think is just a better fragrance overall. Has a very similar scent profile, but it's more complex, more interesting. I feel like this is just really simplistic, and again, overpriced. It's such an overpriced scent. It does become a little bit more smooth, ambery, woody, musky on the dry down, but overall I still think this is a 6 out of 10. I don't think it's worth this price tag. Fleur De Portofino, I kind of have to reapply this again because I think this was actually quite forgettable as a scent overall. So let me smell this again. So yeah, it's a very generic fragrance. It is that laundry detergent, citrus, white floral scent DNA that is present in a lot of fragrances. It reminded me of fragrances like Maison Margiela's Lazy Sunday Morning or Maison Francis Kurkdjian's 724. It's that kind of scent profile, or the Aqua Universalis line, all that kind of stuff. A little bit generic, okay performance, 46 hours, summery, more of a unisex, feminine leaning fragrance that is overpriced in my opinion. The blend isn't that inspiring. It has some nice ingredients, some nice naturals in here. A little bit linen-like, has some green sharpness in there, things that pierce through in the scent DNA. But overall, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Uninspiring, you might like it. It might be worth checking out if you like that style. Vanille Fatale. Now, again, I think this was another fragrance that pleasantly surprised me. So I was not expecting a coffee scent. So this is obviously vanillic. Vanille Fatale makes it sound like it's going to be a sexy, dark vanilla fragrance, which it is. This is a really sexy, feminine evening scent for the cold weather with a coffee touch. A really nice coffee. This is a very good coffee option for those ladies of you out there trying to find a new coffee fragrance. It sort of reminds me of Cafe Rose, which used to be a private blend fragrance. It's now in a signature line, but this is super smooth, thick, elegant. Smells really expensive. It smells like it's worth its price tag. So I think this fragrance is very much worth it. I think this is a really sexy ladies option for an evening scent. I'll give this a 9 out of 10. I really like smelling this. It's a lovely fragrance. Santal Blush. I love sandalwood, and obviously this is a sandalwood based fragrance. It's very clean, powdery, loud, diffusive sandalwood, maybe a medium to loud projection with 6 to 8 hours longevity. I think it's a really sexy DNA. I think this has good wearability. I think it's a really great signature that's unisex for both genders. And I think you can wear it for 3 out of 4 seasons, maybe not the summertime, but funnily enough, I actually remember discovering this fragrance by smelling it on a waiter as he walked past me whilst I was out traveling, hiking in the summertime. And I remember thinking this smells incredible. I think I complimented him on this fragrance. I think this will get you a lot of compliments, this fragrance. I think it's incredibly sexy, has nice projection to it. It's quite a basic fragrance. It's sort of like, it's clean, powdery, sharp and fresh sandalwood. It really is a little bit one-dimensional. It knows what it wants to do. It does it very well, but it's not like, oh, it's got a lot of different things going on in this blend. So I said here it's a nice, clean, powdery signature sandalwood with a dry cedarwood from Virginia. So Virginia cedarwood gives that dry effect I was talking about before. Simple blend. I don't pick up a lot of the notes they list in their note breakdown. And I said if you like fragrances like Acqua di Parma's Sandello or Comme des Garçons Floriental, those sandalwood heavy fragrances, you're gonna love this. Actually, apparently I got 8 to 10 hours longevity with this fragrance. So yeah, it's a good performer. I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. I think it's one of the best from the brand. It could add a little bit something extra there to the blend to make it a little bit more wow. In its blend, it could have an extra wow factor, but I think this is fantastic. So it's a 9 out of 10 for me. So I've got a weird fragrance coming up next. This is Soleil Brulant by Tom Ford. Again, one of their newer fragrances, I believe. Probably horribly overpriced again as well. It's got an interesting idea, but a weird execution overall. It is solar notes, so kind of like sunscreen notes mixed with coffee, mixed with like a gourmand creme brulee effect. And it kind of dries down to this really synthetic, musky dry down. And actually, I think I remember this being synthetic and kind of harsh overall. It's an interesting idea that I think is just poorly executed. It's a little bit on the sweeter side. It's a cold weather scent for sure, and it's long lasting. It's got the performance, but I do not think it's worth its price tag. I think this is unisex. I'm gonna give this a 6 out of 10. A weird fragrance. I did not enjoy this personally. And lastly, Bois Marocain. I think we finally got to the end of the guide, guys. This has been a long journey, but here we are, the last fragrance, Bois Marocain. So I remember this being quite interesting. I think this is going to be a polarizing fragrance. It's very Middle Eastern and very frankincense heavy. It's sort of citrusy, sharp, fresh, with this clean woodiness to it, and that frankincense is bright and it kind of pierces through. So frankincense can give this almost ambery dry down later on, but it kind of gives that initial sharp citrus facets, citrus freshness initially, depending on which kind of frankincense you use, I believe. So I think it smells very Middle Eastern, very woody, very smoky. Again, fits that Middle Eastern woody family that they have in the private blend line. It has good performance, 8 hours, definitely a masculine fragrance, more for the cold weather. Maybe you can wear it, actually maybe you can wear this 3 out of 4 seasons, it's definitely not for the summertime. They probably have some good ingredients in here, but not a lot. I don't think this is a very complex fragrance, but it's definitely an interesting fragrance. I think it's one that's worth checking out. I personally give it a 7.5 out of 10. Whether or not it's worth this price tag will really depend on the individual. And we got to the end of the video, guys. We made it. Thank you if you've been watching all this way through. And again, thank you to ScentSplit for sponsoring today's video. What do you guys think of my opinions given and my ratings given for each of the private blend fragrances today? I tried to cover all of them. Again, only the ones that are in production on the official websites. Do you agree or disagree with my opinions? Again, I'll say go check out ScentSplit in the link in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment. These are the samples I think you should go and get from ScentSplit to really embrace the best of what Tom Ford's private blend has to offer. I would say go to ScentSplit, get a sample of Oud Wood, Tobacco Vanille, Fougere D'Argent, get Santal Blush, get Tuscan Leather, Tubereuse Nue, absolutely, Noir De Noir, Vanille Fatale, Rose Prick, Friggin' Fabulous, Tobacco Oud, and Cherry Smoke, because I think it's worth checking out at least one of their cherry fragrances. And that's it, guys. This video was a tricky one to prepare for and a tricky one to record, but hopefully you guys find this extremely useful. Thank you again, ScentSplit, for sponsoring this video. If you haven't already, guys, make sure you check out our previous buying guide on every single Tom Ford signature line fragrance. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Bye.